are going loud today. We're going very loud today. Yeah, hey, my name's Jono. This is my Gibson Les Paul. We're at the Gear Junkie in Cape Town, South Africa. And this right here is something quite special, and it's just so noisy. So this is a Narb amplifier. For anyone who doesn't know what a Narb is, I only learnt recently when this one came into the shop. As you can see, it looks like a Marshall. It looks a lot like a Marshall. I don't know how closely you can see, but it actually says Jim Marshall on the top in the man's handwriting. He signed it in '96, I think it is. So the Narb amp is one of those fascinating little Marshall side stories where the head designer and Jim Marshall's right-hand man, Kenneth Brann, was basically given license to create a few amps out of spare bits and bobs that existed in the Marshall factory. He didn't want to call the amp Bran because in England in the 70s that was a very popular brand of breakfast cereal. So they just flipped Bran around and went, well, we're going to call it a Narb. So essentially what you've got in this amp is a 70s vintage or 70s era vintage Marshall. It's probably at this point got a printed circuit board, not any of the hand-to-hand wiring stuff. It's definitely got a solid-state rectifier. It's bright, it's aggressive, it's I'd say mid-range gain, but it crunches like, well, I mean, you heard it crunches like hell. And it's an outstanding rock and roll amp. There are very few of them around. There's approximately 70 Narb branded amps in the world. What makes this one particularly special is this is the 50 watt version, and there are only 13 of those. So I'm very lucky to get to play one of these in my lifetime. I probably won't see another one again. Yeah, the whole 50 watt, 100 watt thing in Marshall's interesting. The 50 watts are treasured by guys like Angus Young, I think, and then the other player who uses them is Tom Morello. He likes 50 watt Marshalls because they break up a little earlier. As you can hear, it's quite noisy when we switch it on. The amp is 50 odd years old, so we allow amps like this, things like that, they're allowed to do that. At the moment I've got the EQ set in the way I like to hear my guitars. It's quite a bright, aggressive trebly sound, very little bottom end, but now we're going to take the amp with, just put all the EQs on 12 o'clock and the volumes, we're going to work through the volume stages just to get an idea of what the amp sounds like as a very neutral instrument. I'm using a Les Paul just because a lot of Marshall tone is defined by the Les Pauls being put through them. So what we had there was the amp set 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, very neutral. So pretty much getting the guitar tone as it is. And I've got you can see here, I've got the two inputs bridged. That's a very common trick in the 70s. It was just a way to get more gain out of the amp. You're basically using everything that's available in the amplifier. Got the volume set just at about 9 o'clock. So you've got the amps working at maybe just over a quarter power. And to me, it's a very nice tone. It's a warm tone. It's a very usable tone. There's a lot of people out there who don't like Marshall clean tones. I love Marshall clean tones. I think they're beautiful. Yeah, it doesn't hurt the top end of my ears. It's like being in a comfortable blanket. sound. We're gonna crank it a little more now and see where that takes us. Pretty much, I'm gonna get it into kind of Zeppelin territory now. Pagey tended not to turn his amps up too high. Also, he was using 100 watts, but we'll get a facsimile here. He didn't turn them up very loud. Well, okay, they were very loud, but he was also using a tone boost. But let's see what the amp gives us when we turn it up a little bit, shall we? More gain. Basically, it's getting louder, it's getting a lot louder. And that was a volume differential on both pots of about 1. So this amp's got a lot in it to work with. You know, every minute adjustment you make on the volume is going to give you a slightly different gain characteristic, a slightly different feel characteristic. Notes are going to be expressed differently by the amplifier depending on like just how much more power or how much less power you're giving it. Of course, what I'm not going to get into because of time restraints is, you know, the difference between keeping one of those channels really low and diming the other channel. You know, there's basically the whole world of tone exists between those two, as far as I'm concerned, between those two knobs. So yeah, that was there. We're sitting at about you know, 3.5 on the volume out of 10. So things are going to get hectic now. Let's take it up to about 5. Right, so that's loud. That is very, very loud. Wow. Yeah, my ears felt that one. There, the territory you're talking about is the last little bit of the amp trying to say, I'm still doing clean things, please don't beat me, daddy. But you beat it and it makes a noise like that. And it's great. It's fantastic. That's where Angus Young lives. He takes 50-watt Marshalls and he keeps them at about 5. And it's a glorious sound. Oh man, it sounds so good. Just it's that quintessential Marshall roar and grunt and kick you in the face and make your solar plexus feel a little gooey. It's beautiful, man. I love it. So let's make it louder. That's where amplifiers get really fun, because you can pretty much do everything that you need to do using 2 buttons. Right, that's what Marshalls at 10 sound like. It's quite frightening. It's lots of fun as well. You feel very cool, I'm not going to lie. That bit of squeakiness there, it's a 50-year-old amp. They sometimes just have, they're old, you know, 50-year-old men have back pain. You know, you got to feel for the amps as well. It's something I would be nervous of taking out on the road and gigging because it's one of 13 on the planet. So I would, if I had the means to buy an amp like this and I was looking seriously at doing it, it would be for studio use, where the amp can sit in one place, doesn't get moved around, doesn't get fucked with, and you know, you can have a dedicated setup to when you need 70s rock and roll tone and you need to turn an amp to 10. Well, there's your Narb, and it makes that noise, and it makes it so good. So yeah, that's the Narb. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Gear Junkie. You guys are amazing.